Hey there, dolls. It's been a while. And I hope you don't mind me doing something a little different today. The recent entry in the Silent Hill franchise is out, a little experiment in audience participation in how a story plays out known as Silent Hill Ascension. I wanted to share with you the story that covers up to the end of Chapter 7, just before it went on hiatus for the holiday season. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as I bring you the rundown of the story of Silent Hill Ascension thus far. Chapter 1, A Miss. Our story takes place in two locations. Neither of them are Silent Hill. First, we are in Hope's Junction, Pennsylvania, where a religious group known as the Foundation occupies. Rachel Hernandez, a senior member of the Foundation, is performing a ritual with recent initiate Joy Sorelli. This involves slicing the wrists, but Joy is having second thoughts after the first slice. Apparently, she has something known as blight, and she hasn't been responding well to the Foundation's other therapy, so this blood ritual is the last resort. Joy gets up to leave, but something, a monster, stops her. Rachel begs for Joy to finish the oath, but while she begins to say the words, Joy is killed by the fiend. As interesting as all that is, we must skip all the way across the globe into Stildalen, Norway. Stildalen being Norwegian for, you guessed it, Silent Valley. Here resides the Johansen family. Inside the house, we hear an elderly woman, Ingrid Johansen, verbally abusing her grown daughter Astrid, while Astrid's son Orson waits downstairs. After the matriarch says insulting things about her grandson, Astrid takes the boy and leaves. Carl, Ingrid's husband and Astrid's father, goes upstairs to check on his ill wife, who has nothing kind to say to him either. During a coughing fit, she knocks over a syringe from her nightstand. Remember this because it's of vital importance. Carl goes to fetch Ingrid some water when a call comes through the phone. She asks if it's Mette, clearly another woman who Ingrid suspects Carl of being in love with, but it's only their daughter. Regardless, this just causes Ingrid to spew more bile towards him that he's a useless husband who only settled for her because the woman who Carl actually loves never loved him back. Hearing what sounds like wolves outside, Carl goes to take care of it. Inspecting the outdoors, Carl hears his grandson and sees a figure in the distance. Before he can get closer, he hears Ingrid screaming from within the house as though someone is attacking her. Carl sees a man in the bedroom window approaching his wife. He runs towards the house, being chased by the figure in the field, another monster. As he approaches the home, he seems to be teleported to a strange location filled with horrors and spooky red lighting. He shortly wakes up in his bedroom as if everything were only just a dream, but discovers Ingrid is dead. We're back to Hope's Junction, where Rachel reflects on the failed ritual that cost Joy her life. Another Foundation member approaches her, an older gentleman named Xavier, who tells her that Joy's death seems to resemble that of an aneurysm. Oh, thank God, natural causes. Rachel tells him that she saw something inhuman appeared and seemed to hang from ropes or vines. The man quotes Radcliffe Chapter 7, "The purifier came cloaked in roots and vines," believing the figure that killed Joy was this divine being referred to as the purifier. It killed the blighted Joy and chose Rachel to protect them from its spread. Krista, another Foundation member, believes Rachel may be cursed instead, taking Rachel's background into consideration, and suggests that she may have saw another divine being instead of the purifier, but Xavier interrupts her before she can say the name. The elders of the cult will have Rachel testify, and they will render a judgment on Joy's death. Hey, well, look on the bright side, Rach. At least it's not the police. Rachel goes to meet with her husband Eric at the laundromat they run. Eric is a recent initiate into the Foundation, likely joining due to his wife being more established, and is also the only likable character in all of Ascension. Yeah, it's just this guy here. Rachel informs him that Joy died during their ritual. He wonders how that happened, but she can't share that with him due to his new initiate status within the Foundation. He asks if Toby, Joy's brother, has been informed. He hasn't, but Rachel will just simply write him a sorry for your loss card and have Eric deliver the bad news instead. Eric is an old friend of Toby who hates the Foundation, and considering Rachel recruited Joy, he would totally blame her for his sister's death, and be valid in doing so. Back in Norway, Carl is sitting at home distressed over the loss of his wife when his daughter Astrid comes in. He laments that he did his best, and Astrid tries to send her son off to visit his grandmother so she can comfort her father. Carl protests this, and Astrid realizes that her mother Ingrid has passed away. She at first assumes that her father may have done something wrong and that he didn't even try to help her, but then she discovers the syringe. See, told you to remember it. Carl says it's Ingrid's painkiller, but Ostrid states that she wasn't prescribed any injections. Ostrid's now more convinced that her father must have killed her mother and threatens to turn it over to the police. Back at Hope's Junction, we see Toby in a bar restroom. It seems he's trying to get a hold of his sister Joy, but she isn't answering her phone. Eric arrives and informs him that Joy is dead. When Toby asks how it happened, Eric doesn't really have an answer, but tells him that Rachel said it was an accident and that her thoughts and prayers are with him. Toby, surprisingly, doesn't handle the news well. At the Foundation, Rachel believes she sees a snarling dog, but it was just simply an illusion. Maybe, who knows? Except no. Xavier snaps her out of it and tells her it's a blessing similar to Radcliffe, who I guess is the founder of the Foundation. He also saw things that many thought were monsters, but he saw a more holy spirit in them. Krista thinks it may be something referred to as the pestilent. Xavier disagrees and thinks that Rachel has brought them proof of their protector, the Purifier. Regardless of whether it was the Purifier or the pestilent, Rachel lets them know that Toby has been informed of Joy's death and that he'll need to be dealt with at some point. She also brings up that her husband Eric is asking questions, but the other members of the Foundation don't quite trust Eric enough with informing him on all the details due to his new initiate status. Back in Norway, sorry, I'm going to be going back and forth the globe constantly. Carl is speaking with Detective Haugen on his wife's recent passing. The officer lets it be known that many of the people of Stildalen are thrilled, as they were apparently not fond of Ingrid, and, well, honestly, I don't blame them. The detective informs them that there will be an autopsy, and as Ostrid walks her out, Haugen throws in that she is suspicious about Ingrid's death. I mean, I understand there's a big mystery around it and all, but I don't know if the police should be revealing their suspicions so soon to the most likely suspects. Rachel has another hallucination at home when Eric comes in, wanting to talk about Toby and Joy's death. Rachel does tell him that Joy died during the ceremony, but tells Eric to keep it quiet, shush shush, until the Foundation figures everything out. She sees something out in the hallway that frightens her and tells Eric to grab Faith, their daughter, and go to the Foundation hall. And what is clearly a prompt to evoke players to participate in the polls, the couple try to decide what to tell Faith. A lie that it's a sleepover, a scripture story to appease Xavier, who doesn't approve of lying to children, or the truth. Toby's wandering the woods at night, listening to Joy's final voicemail. Then he hears Joy's voice, insulting him. He sees her corpse in the woods, and then finally, her ghost. She's enraged at how the Foundation and Rachel got her killed. She yells at Toby on how Rachel screwed him over and ruined his life before taking hers. Joy wants revenge, and for Toby to act on it. However, she knows that even with proof, no one will believe Toby as the town drunk. So instead of gathering evidence and turning it all over to law enforcement, Joy wants him to burn it all down. Toby states he can't do that, but by then, her ghost has ghosted him. Ostrid is at her lab analyzing the contents of the syringe she found in her mother's bedroom to learn that it contained morphine. A call from her son's school comes in to inform her that Orson has been in a fight with another boy and bit him. While it seems clear the teacher knows that Orson was defending himself from the bully, another coworker gives some suggestions on how to discipline Orson for Ostrid to think over and then act on what some gamers decide. Carl checks in on Orson and notices a young neighbor, Ava, in the room. Her mother kicked her out and came to hang around a bit. Orson asks where his grandmother is, but no one has told him exactly what has happened to her. Ava shares her past memory of learning when her own grandmother died when she was younger. This prompts Carl to tell Orson that his grandmother is dead. Carl soon needs to do some work outside and asks Orson if he'll be okay for a bit. The boy mentions that he'll play with Zane, the man in the fog. Carl just thinks it's an imaginary friend, but we all know better. At the Foundation, Rachel tells Faith a scripture story to calm her down, which actually winds up working. Rachel confides in Xavier that she saw something, but doesn't think it's the Purifier, and that she's worried about her family and if perhaps Krista is right. Carl's playing with Orson when Ostrid comes home. Knowing that she wants to discipline him, Carl leaves and Ostrid lectures her son that biting the other kid was wrong. The ugliness he showed to the boy was similar to how his grandmother behaved. Okay, goddamn, this is coming from Ingrid's only defender, mind you. Carl and Astrid are alone for a bit, and while he compliments her parenting, Astrid is back to being Ingrid's defense lawyer. Okay, defend the monster you don't want your son to be. She tells him that she analyzed the contents in the syringe and is still convinced he killed Ingrid or is involved in her death. While they argue, Carl, and only Carl, notices a monster behind Astrid. He throws something at it, but by then it's gone. Astrid now thinks her father is weirdly violent and tells him that she doesn't want him anywhere near Orson. In Hope's Junction, there's a moment when Rachel sees a monster that is there and then isn't. Eric's concerned, but there's no confiding in him from his wife. Returning to Norway, Astrid calls over Detective Haugen and hands over the syringe as evidence. Detective Haugen approaches Carl and informs him that Astrid gave her the syringe. I don't know if this is proper police procedure to let your main suspect know that evidence to possibly incriminate them has been handed over, but lo and behold, that's what's happening, folks. She also seems like she would love the opportunity to lock him up. Even better, let the suspect know that you have a personal vendetta against them. Guess we're setting up the Johanssons as the black sheep is still Dallin. Carl asks if she intends to cuff him, but when she doesn't, he's aware they have nothing on him. The detective wants to give him the opportunity to confess to murder, but Carl refuses, knowing the truth won't be accepted. At the foundation, Rachel meets with the council in a room with Joy's corpse just lying on an altar. Yeah, let's not hand over her body to the family or any proper containment center for a corpse. Jeez. The head of the council, Barbara, questions Rachel about what happened during Joy's initiation ceremony. Rachel insists something killed Joy, but she can't provide a clearer answer than that. Everything during the ritual was followed correctly, but the appearance of this thing and Joy's death has led Rachel to doubt the order. The council does not appreciate Rachel questioning the order's faith, but this is a grave matter not worth ignoring, and Barbara orders a ritual of clarity to be conducted. Xavier is hesitant to perform another ritual, considering, what happened during the last one, but Barbara believes it's necessary in order to stop the withering. Everyone is shocked, I tell ya, to hear the withering could be upon them. Rachel agrees to perform the ritual of clarity, and Barbara informs her she needs to choose someone to perform it with, ideally someone Rachel has a strong bond with. A council member suggests Eric, Rachel's husband. Though he's still a new initiate, who else would have a stronger bond with her? Xavier suggests Krista, as their friction might be an unknowing strength in the ritual. Barbara also offers herself as an option, despite barely knowing Rachel. Regardless, they allow Rachel some time to make her decision. And that ends Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Blight. Astrid is overlooking some cultures when her father barges in. Carl thought he was picking Orson up to take him to school, but he wasn't there. Astrid reminds him that she doesn't want her murderous father anywhere near Orson. Carl's disappointed but not surprised with this answer, considering Astrid gave Detective Haugen the syringe. Carl tries to bring the subject back to Orson, but Astrid insists she will handle her son. Safe to say that Astrid is a single mother, but we don't know anything about Orson's father, whether he's dead, divorced, missing, what have you. Back in Hope's Junction, Toby is sitting at the bar when an ex-Foundation member approaches him. They speak about how the Foundation is a cult that takes advantage of vulnerable people, like this woman losing her partner in an incident at the steel mill. She mentions that some family members who are still a part of the Foundation mentioned something huge will be going down later in the week. Toby could ask his friend Eric about it, but considering how Eric is fiercely loyal to Rachel, it won't be easy to get anything out of him. In the restroom, Toby hears strange noises coming from one of the stalls. It sounds like Joy strangled and trying to breathe. Toby peeks into a stall that seems to be where the noises are coming from, as it's lit with scary red lighting. But all you see is what looks like a bottle of pills and then a flash of something, with the screeching sound that suggests, ooh, there was a spooky thing there. But we, the audience, don't get to see it. Toby does, though, and he skedaddles on out of the restroom. At the famous ice bar in Steel Dallin, Carl confides in Leo, the bartender, about Astrid believing he killed Ingrid. Carl tells the bartender that he believes someone else killed his wife, as he saw a man in her room that night, but doesn't think Haugen will believe him. Meanwhile, Rachel is at the Foundation when she hears cries for help and men banging on the windows. It appears to be another hallucination as everything goes back to normal when Eric, Barbara, and Krista barge in.
Rachel wants to perform the Ritual of Clarity soon as the visions grow stronger and has decided for Krista to perform it with her. And I'm just going to tell y'all, the community is weirdly pro Krista, so expect that to be playing out in the narrative. Barbara understands but wants to speak with Rachel alone, sending Eric and Krista away. Don't worry, Rach. She just wants you to know that she has learned more about you from Xavier and believes you're the one person to stop the withering. It's all on your shoulders, Rachel. Hope you don't have any doubts. Astrid is at home with Carl, Orson staying elsewhere as they mention he isn't there, still not wanting him around. Carl mentions that he spoke with Britt, Astrid's sister, and Carl's other daughter, to try and get her to come home for the funeral, but Britt is still incredibly angry with her mother, whose abuse turned Britt towards drugs and alcohol. Carl suggests Astrid to reach out to her sister, but she groans that Britt hates her as much as she hated Ingrid. Carl wants Astrid to try and reach out to her sister in the hopes of the family growing closer once more. Toby goes to the Hernandez's laundromat to speak with Eric. No one's around, but there's odd thumping and cries for help coming from one of the dryers. Eric soon comes in, and Toby asks him about a meeting happening at the foundation. Eric tells his friend that he can't really talk about that sort of thing. You know, it's foundation stuff. But Toby begs Eric to please help bring closure regarding Joy's death. You know, the one that Rachel might be responsible for. All Eric knows is that Rachel will be performing a ritual the following night, but not much more than that. But that's all that Toby needs as he marches out of the building. Walking down the fog-covered streets, he comes across Joy's ghost once more, but this time there's needles sticking out of her body, you know, 'cause she used drugs. She was a druggie. Anyways, her tormenting her brother continues. If you blame the Foundation for your death, maybe give them some torment too, Joy. Why just your brother? Carl's being interrogated by Detective Haugen and mentions the autopsy revealed puncture marks in Ingrid's body. The syringe Astrid turned in as possible evidence contained morphine, but Ingrid's doctor informed the police that she was never prescribed the drug. So where did the morphine come from, Carl? Did it come from his daughter's lab? The hospital? Where, Carl? Where? But all he can manage to mutter is how there was someone or something else that he saw through the bedroom window. But Haugen isn't buying it. Unfortunately, a report comes in that reveals Ingrid's cause of death was complications from her illness, completely natural, and thus frees Carl as the prime suspect. A foggy stay in Stilldalen, Orson is playing with his soccer ball while Astrid takes this opportunity to call Britt about their mother's death. Astrid is understanding on why Britt won't be attending the funeral, but her sister just aggressively rants about how terrible their mother was and that it drove her to drink and become an addict. You know, it's trauma. Well, the call ends and Astrid realizes that Orson is nowhere nearby. As she calls for her son, the sky turns red, and Astrid seems to have entered what previous Silent Hill games refer to as the other world. Maybe that's what it was called. I don't remember. It's been well over 10 years since I played a Silent Hill game, not including the PT demo.
Which does turn 10 years old this year.
A monster approaches Astrid, but before it can get close, another woman kills it. In paying homage to the original Silent Hill, Astrid asks her savior if she's seen a little boy, in which the woman replies, I don't know, maybe. Soon, Astrid sees a man holding Orson's soccer ball, but the woman with her is immediately telling Astrid to club the man. Okay, calm down, girl. We can't just be clubbing everyone in this hellscape. Sometimes they're important NPCs. But however Astrid decides to approach him, our cameo contest winner has to move along. Carl's back at the farm talking to Britt, who's still bitching about Astrid offering up an olive branch. Carl wraps up the call when neighbor Ava comes by to show him a strange carcass. She knows there's something out in the woods and seems to be the only person besides Carl aware of the danger. The farmer notices she has a gun and Ava was hoping he would teach her how to use it. Carl knows Ava's mother wouldn't be thrilled if he did, but she points out that Carl is aware it might be useful for her to know how to shoot, you know, because there be things of running afoot. At the foundation, the Ritual of Clarity is beginning. Rachel doesn't know why Joy died, but believes her doubts are putting everyone in danger, and will allow herself to be subject to the Purifier's judgment. Krista and Rachel begin the ritual, but before things could get going, it's all interrupted by Toby hurling a Molotov cocktail into the room. Rachel seems to pass out, and during that period, everyone, but Eric, are in the red nightmare realm, and they aren't alone. But as thrilling as that all is, we need to go back to Stilldalen. Astrid sneaks up on the man who has Orson's ball, but the moment she looks away, all that remains of him is...
following me.
Immediately afterwards, Astrid is back in the real world, where a woman approaches her with Orson by her side. Apparently, an hour has passed since Orson has gone missing. The woman mentions she knows about Astrid's family, the Johanssons, because we gotta build up the family as outcasts to the Stilldalen community without going into any details just yet. Despite Orson being gone for, just a little while, the woman called Child Services for possible neglect because it's not like children ever run off or anything. At the Foundation, everyone stares at the monster, which I believe is officially referred to as the Entangler. It devours one of the Foundation members. This is also the same monster responsible for Joy's death. It soon approaches Rachel, and as she closes her eyes expecting the worst, she's suddenly awoken by her husband, suggesting what just happened was a dream. But everyone besides Eric saw it. He yells at Toby, but Toby believes that the Foundation is the one that summoned the monster. Now the leaders of the Foundation know that the withering is upon them. Barbara insists on everyone going home, but Krista is still going on about it. Xavier believes the blight is spreading, and when Krista mentions that Rachel is possibly blighted, Xavier defends her, saying that Rachel is chosen by the Purifier. Barbara interrupts them by stating they need to find the source of the withering and stick together to eradicate it. Rachel wonders what needs to be done about Toby now that he's been exposed to it too. Xavier wants to keep Toby on a leash, as he's going to cause problems down the road. Rachel suggests having Eric keep him close, but Krista wants to use Toby's belief that they can summon monsters as a means of control. After all that, Toby needs a drink. He's at the liquor store when he sees, who else? Joy's ghost again, blaming him for everything bad in the world, like her death and what happened at the steel mill. That NPC earlier mentioned an incident at the steel mill too. This accusation has Toby cause a commotion that the store clerk gets involved and threatens to call the cops. Also blaming him for the steel mill incident. What happened at the steel mill, Toby? What did you do? Ava approaches Carl, digging a grave to put another pile like the one she showed him in. She tells us another childhood memory of when she found a dead rabbit to take home and study like the little weirdo she is. Carl thinks it's others in town harassing them, but Ava doesn't know the Johanssons' own steel mill incident. He tries to send her home when a monstrous dog runs nearby in the woods. Ava grabs the nearby shotgun to try and shoot it, but misses. Carl grabs the shotgun from her, kills the dog like the stealth Chad he is, and sends the girl home. Toby endures more of Joy's funny way of asking for revenge upon her death. He apologizes to her and begs for her to forgive him, but the only response she gives him is vomiting up a monster that then takes the shape of Rachel. End scene. Yup. This happens, and it's never mentioned again. Astrid and Orson are at the docks to meet the social worker, Aurora. Aurora seems to be genuinely sympathetic and understanding to Astrid as she explains what happened when Orson escaped her sight. Aurora mentions that the woman who filed the report noted Astrid was behaving like she was hiding, but she evades the question as the truth would be hard to believe. Aurora speaks with Orson for a moment in which he reveals that he gave a soccer ball to Zane, the imaginary friend who lives in the fog, and that now he has nothing to play with. Astrid's quick to let Aurora know he does have other toys. This version of CPS takes child neglect very seriously, and Aurora would like to have a few more meetings with Astrid to confirm things as well as suggest getting Orson a toy, a cue for another decision for the community to vote on. Aurora's beeper goes off, a bit surprised to see that those are still being used, and leaves as she heads to her next client. Eric gently asks Rachel about what happened during the night of the ritual, but she wants to know how Toby got word about it. Thankfully for Eric, their daughter Faith interrupts them for a moment to let them know she was scared, but remembered the choice the Soundhill Ascension community made in a previous poll, and all was well. Okay. Rachel then sends the kid off to get ready for bed. Once Faith has left, Eric tells her that Toby begged him and he couldn't not say anything. Rachel chastises her husband that Toby was playing off his sympathies and knowing how soft Eric is. We learn that Toby was Eric's first friend when he came to America and that he misses the days of when they were all friends. Rachel understands but knows that Eric's soft heart will be taken advantage of by the wrong people. After all, she's likely one of them. Even though she is frustrated with Eric talking to Toby, she does need him to try and get Toby to back off of the Foundation. Eric says he'll try, which isn't ideal for Rachel, but it's the best she's gonna get. At the bar, Toby doodles on napkins the monster he saw at the Foundation and intends to take it to a journalist, claiming the FBI was interested in what he had to say. Eric comes in and tells Toby that he understands the death of Joy is deeply painful for him, but the more he gets involved, the more trouble he'll cause for everyone else. However, Toby's frustrated that Eric is being Rachel's obedient little mouthpiece. Eric doesn't appreciate the way Toby speaks about Rachel like a good husband would. I can't say that Toby isn't entirely wrong about her either. Eric is loyal to her and in turn the Foundation, but they keep him in the dark about everything while asking a lot from him. Toby warns Eric he's going to expose the Foundation and that he doesn't want him and Faith to get caught up in it. Over at the Foundation, Xavier has a crazy idea and wants Rachel to recruit Toby. Since Toby has seen the Withering, Xavier wants her to convince him that they can offer him some protection. Rachel reasonably mentions that Toby believes they summoned that monster and won't trust them. Xavier's counter? Feed Toby's paranoia, and that the Foundation wouldn't want Toby to, suddenly have an accident. You know what I'm saying? Rachel could also try showing some genuine remorse about Joy's death. That sorry for your loss card handed to him by her husband and not herself did Rachel no favors. Rachel isn't sure if she should do this, but Xavier tells her this is not a request, it's a demand. Carl's chopping wood back in Steel Dallin when he hears Ava blasting away nearby. If he won't teach her, she'll teach herself. Carl knows how dangerous firearms are and decides to finally teach her how to shoot and where to aim. It's getting late, so he sends Ava home. As the young girl walks away, Carl hears something shatter. Gun in hand, he approaches the side of the barn to see a woman looking for a key. Turns out, this is Mette, the woman Ingrid insisted was Carl's one true love. You may have noticed she looks similar to Ingrid, and that's because Mette is also Carl's sister-in-law. Yeah, so the woman who Ingrid claimed had a hold on his heart was her own sister! Chapter 3, Penance. The third chapter begins in Steeldalen, where Astrid is taking Orson out after the rough time the kid has been having, losing his bitch of a grandmother, being kicked out of school for defending himself, and was unable to find his mom the other day. They're gonna have ice cream alongside Orson's new toy, a hunter doll, just like Grampy. This was closely tied to the scientist doll in the Veer pool, but I'm sure the community chose wisely.
Bang, bang, bang! You're dead!
While they try to get to the station, they get lost in the fog, and it seems no matter which way they turn, the two keep coming back to the same fountain. Oh no! It's just like PT! Carl and Mette talk about Ingrid's passing. Mette jokes how Carl nearly offed her last chapter. But the conversation turns to the important matter of where she's staying. There is the hotel in town. That is also where the ice bar Carl frequents, but they don't seem fond of that idea. Carl offers to have Mette stay at his place, but Astrid isn't very fond of her aunt. Wonder why. Well, this was another community vote, and the obvious decision comes out on top. Back in Hope's Junction, Eric is cleaning up the laundromat when Toby walks in with more kind words about Rachel. Eric, the obedient husband, does start with saying how he did think Rachel would overreact to Toby's presence, but the smack talk about his wife is not at all appreciated. Eric stands by his woman. Toby silently withdraws, but then he sees Joy's ghost laughing at him outside and he leaves. Wandering the streets, Toby mutters that he's going to leave town, but as he's walking along, he keeps winding back to the electronics store. Not another PT loop! After a few loops, Toby comes across some monsters in the road. A stranger nearby is also lost in the fog. Toby approaches the man to prevent him from attracting the creatures. The stranger recognizes Toby, but before we learn how, the monsters approach, and the two men run away. Oh, and we also never see this NPC character again. Astrid seems to have recovered from her own loop just fine and arrives at Carl's farm. Orson nowhere to be seen. Astrid still not wanting Carl near him, even though the police determined her mother's death was natural. However, she is none too pleased to see her aunt greet her, and that she'll be staying over a few nights.
You sure? I hear the hotel is very nice.
Actually, I remember your old room was very comfortable.
Oh, must be great to hear that from your aunt and dad's maybe lover. Astrid tries to help with Mette's luggage, but notices a container of morphine falls out of her bag. Oh, that's what was in Ingrid's system, despite no doc prescribing her morphine. Mette just gives a, oops, silly me, I'm a tired, overworked nurse spiel. She also lets it slip that Carl was administering it to his late wife. Well, guess he's back on the suspect list, but not alone this time. Carl overhears the two and walks in to end the scene. Rachel's eavesdropping on Krista and a cameo contest winner, and Krista isn't thrilled that Xavier has insisted Rachel recruit Toby. She just doesn't understand why Xavier trusts Rachel after Joy's death and Toby interrupting the ritual of cleansing. Rachel lets her presence in the room be known, but Krista doesn't care that she overheard all that. She'll gladly say it to her face. Rachel tries to gloat that she's Xavier's favorite, but Krista does have a sound argument. All Rachel can do is repeat what Xavier has told her. But they don't know what's causing the withering, and Krista still is not convinced Rachel is the Purifier's chosen one. Rachel's failure is inevitable in her eyes, and she does not expect anything else. Well, Rachel walks around town, her phone going off with a silent ho ringtone. Unfortunately, the call doesn't quite come through all right. A weird bald man bumps into Rachel, but she recognizes him as Joy's dealer. He hasn't seen Joy since the Foundation got her clean and then dead, but he may know where Rachel can find Toby. The dealer knows Toby doesn't like Rachel, but Toby will listen to him. He definitely seems like someone worth listening to over Rachel. Rachel offers to pay the dealer whatever he wants to locate the town drunk, but the dealer wants blood, specifically Rachel's blood, for protection from them. Back in Norway, Astrid still keeps coming around without Orson, still suspecting her father for her mother's death despite the autopsy report having cleared him. Anyway, how did you sleep, Mette?
Yes, the bed in Astrid's old room is very comfortable.
Carl suggests they all have a family meal sans Brit, but Astrid brings up that Mette has something to share with Carl. And before her aunt even has a chance to speak, Astrid cuts her off, mentioning she found morphine in her bag. First, she was accusing her father, now her aunt. She also acts all shocked that Mette didn't bring it up before, but again, you cut her off. Mette says she can explain, and Carl is all ears. So they go to the ice bar at the hotel Mette didn't have to stay at to explain off-screen what the morphine was all about. Whew, glad that misunderstanding's over. Carl seems happy with it, which makes me think he bought her accidentally bringing it home from the hospital. There's more teasing the audience with beef between Mette and Astrid. Regardless of how his daughter feels, Carl is happy Mette is with them. Conversation turns to the night Ingrid died, and he mentions he saw someone in his wife's room. No one believes him, but he knows what he saw and that it has been at the farm killing goats ever since that night. Mette suggests setting up traps, but he worries about his grandson stumbling into one by accident and getting hurt. Astrid believes surveillance cameras would be a good idea, but Carl isn't fond of it. The bartender, Leo, has suggested an Algi's rune, a rune of protection because they're Norwegian. Carl doesn't think that'll scare off any wolves, but he still needs the audience to make a decision for him. Returning to Hope's Junction, Rachel does donate a vial of her blood to Joy's dealer. Pleased with the trade, he takes her to see Toby, who isn't thrilled to see her, especially after running around the fog in circles. The dealer convinces Toby to listen to Rachel, mentioning she's helped Joy get clean. She also helped her die, but we don't need to bring that up. She invites Toby to join the Foundation, and he scoffs at the offer. Hoping it will appease him and get him to join, Rachel admits to Toby that she's an asshole, demanding, and controlling, but in a tone that doesn't sound sincere in the slightest. Well, Toby says he'll consider joining, but psych! He winds up rejecting the offer. Astrid is wandering town when she notices something in the window's reflection. What's that? It's trauma. Astrid runs around the corner to hide from her mother's ghost. As she comes out of hiding, Astrid bumps into Detective Haugen, who needs to speak with her about Ingrid. There was a mix-up at the morgue, and her mother is no longer there. It's likely a clerical error because, well, the other possibility is ridiculous. We've heard a lot about how the Johansons are not well-liked in Steeldalen, and apparently Detective Haugen would be among some of the people who has the biggest beef with them. The detective understands Astrid's perspective, but she takes her job seriously and wouldn't go outside of proper procedure with Ingrid's body. Haugen promises to figure out what happened to Ingrid and that she'll reach out to Astrid once she has an answer. Toby is once more wandering through the fog, Joy's silhouette looming in the backdrop as he stands in front of the Foundation itself. Joy's ghost taunts him still, that the Foundation used and broke her, but now Toby can make things right by joining the Foundation and destroying them from within. He vows to her that he'll make them pay. As soon as Joy's ghost disappears, Krista sees Toby and invites him in. In Norway, Carl is tracking something when Astrid informs him that Detective Haugen has lost Ingrid's body. Even though the detective wanted Astrid to keep it quiet, she had to tell her father, and now she doesn't trust the police. While we still don't know much, Astrid did mention Haugen would have a motive to do something like this. Carl believes they're working with the Vandals, the ones leaving bloody piles around the farm. While the Johanssons have dealt with harassment in the past, something about this feels different. Astrid would like to gather hard evidence of this and suggests again to Carl to set up surveillance cameras. Back with the Hernandez family, Rachel tells Eric she'd tried to recruit Toby at the behest of Xavier, but failed. Eric understands why Toby declined, but mentions that ever since the ritual, something hasn't felt right. While he has an inkling of what happened, Eric is still in the dark and wants Rachel to please explain everything to him. She says that she can't due to Foundation law or something, but Eric is her husband. As long as she continues to keep things from him, he's more inclined to think Toby's right about her and that the Foundation is more important to Rachel than her own family. Considering what happened on the night of the ritual of cleansing and Joy's death, Eric has genuine concerns that he and their daughter, Faith, are in danger. Rachel promises that they're safe, and while she starts to say that the purifier will keep them safe, she stops herself to then say that she will keep them safe. Overseas, Carl and Ava are hunting in the woods to see if they can catch whoever or whatever is lurking in the woods. He tries to send Ava home as it doesn't feel safe, but her mother kicked her out of the house again, so not happening. Soon they hear a noise in the woods. Carl approaches it, gun held high, but it turns out to just be a man who's foraging late at night in the fog for berries.
I'm just gonna let this bit play out because, oh my gosh, it's wonderful.
I'm just foraging for wild berries, I swear. I stumbled on a great patch of rowan berries over here.
Have you seen anything unusual out here?
Now that you mention it, I have seen some strange things out in these woods. You? I've been rooting for berries and other things for several seasons now. I like to make jams. I sell them in town. I could bring you some. Maybe you and your family would like that.
Carl tells the man to keep moving and that he's on his property. The forager moves along, and so does the story. In the Foundation at Hope's Junction, Toby tells Krista he wants to join. Krista asks if Rachel was able to convince him, and he tells her that while she did try, Rachel isn't why he's there. Krista, who we know is internally screaming in ecstasy that Rachel failed to convince Toby to join, asks him why. He gives some nonsense that he's tired of running, but moves on to what it takes to join before he can go any deeper with his reasoning. He jokes about sacrificing a finger, but Krista tells him he'll need to be paired up with a mentor to guide them through his initiation. Unfortunately, Eric is too new in the Foundation to be one, but Rachel's an option and would show Toby is committed to growing as a person considering their history. Krista is also another option, but she tells him to read over some papers and get back to her with his decision. Carl places some runes around the farm to protect the house alongside Ava. As he patrols around the perimeter, something approaches. Carl sends Ava inside before a monster jumps out and attacks him. Surprised, Carl drops the gun, but Ava stuck around against his orders. She picks it up and fires it at the creature. When getting closer to inspect it, they don't find a monster, but actually, the forager from earlier. Carl angrily asks the man if he's been bothering him the past few nights, but this is all the forager manages to spit out.
Rip the heart from her town. I'll let you hide on this farm. This is your tomb.
Ava recalls another memory from her childhood about a bunny she found that was attacked by a cat. She knew the bunny was dying, but instead of helping it or putting it out of its misery, she just wrapped it in a rag and left it, never checking if it died. Cool story. At the Foundation, Rachel approaches Xavier and Barbara. Xavier is disappointed that Rachel failed to recruit Toby, but she reminds him that he knew Toby didn't like her and that this is his fault, actually. Xavier tells her he wouldn't have asked her to do something he didn't believe is outside of her capabilities. Rachel says she'll try again, but Krista comes in to gloat that Toby already came of his own will to join after Rachel failed to convince him. Now that he's willing to join, they need to perform his induction ceremony, and Barbara asks Rachel to have Faith be the needle bearer. Rachel's hesitant because things are rough with Toby for her and her family, as well as Eric thinks Faith is too young to be involved with the Foundation. Barbara doesn't care about all of that, so Rachel agrees to talk to Eric. Carl and Ava check the runes that seem to have worked based off the dialogue. I guess the monster turned into the forager when he got near them, I don't know. Carl calls for medics, but by the time they arrive, the forager is gone. Detective Haugen mentions that they sent a canine search unit, but they recovered nothing, and one of the dogs is now missing. Since it looks like nothing happened, she decides to leave. At the Hernandez place, Rachel tries to convince Eric for Faith to be the needle bearer for Toby's induction ceremony. Eric understands, but considering how scary some of the Foundation stuff is, he doesn't think it's a good idea. Rachel isn't too happy he's disobeying her. Faith is able to hear them and comes in. She was bored playing alone and wants to play hide and seek with Mommy. Rachel's busy, but Faith begins throwing a tantrum. Eric offers to play instead, but Faith refuses. She wants to play with Mom because she's always too busy with the Foundation to play with her.
Screaming and throwing a fit isn't how we get our way.
That's what you do. Maybe if I yell and shout, I can get what I want too.
She learned this from you, Mom! Rachel sends Faith to her room, but the child won't hear it and slaps her mother. Oh, Faith is in for the famous Latina mother's stern talking. But you can't lecture a child who isn't there, and so Faith runs off. Rachel searches the house for her and eventually goes to the basement. There's some eerie sounds and kind of a spooky atmosphere, but nothing happens here other than Faith jump scaring her mom. Chapter 4, Severance. Yeah, that's how Chapter 3 ended. A thrilling conclusion, I know. Anyways, Chapter 4, Severance. Carl and Astrid are having dinner, and she is now comfortable with bringing Orson back to the farm. Yay! Astrid has chosen Ingrid's dress for the funeral and asks her father if she's found her mother's ring, as she wants to bury it with her. Carl wants Astrid to have it, but she doesn't feel right about it. The ring is from Ingrid's mother, so perhaps Mette could have it instead, but Astrid really doesn't like that idea. The dinner is interrupted by the arrival of Detective Haugen, who has news for the Johansons. They've recovered Ingrid's body, but it was a little teensy-weensy, itsy-bitsy bit desecrated. Carl, understandably enraged, rants how the police's neglect proves how untrustworthy they are and that this is just another attack on their family. He leaves the dining room, and Detective Haugen tells Astrid they'll hold the body until the funeral before she leaves. Mette comes in to offer her apologies and wishes to help with the funeral planning. Unreasonable as always, Astrid shakes off the offer to help as she's too busy dealing with her father to invent ways to make Mette feel helpful. Alright, okay, set aside whatever beef you have with your aunt and have her help bury her sister. I mean, she's been her sister longer than she's been your mother. Carl's upstairs looking through Ingrid's old things when Mette approaches. He's found Ingrid's ring, and Mette reminisces, saying her sister never appreciated what it meant to have it. Carl tells Mette that Astrid wants to bury the ring with her mother, but he'd rather have Astrid have it. Mette mentions that, per her family traditions, the ring is passed along to the eldest surviving woman in the family, and the ring going to her would be what her mother would have wanted. Another crossroad, another vote. Back in Hope's Junction, Toby is at the Foundation to undergo his induction ceremony.
Our guest of honor. Come, join us, Toby. In the past, we had needle bearers for this ceremony. It should be a reminder of how often we must carry these burdens on our own, and how some of us can lack faith.
Ooh, girl, he talking about you. The ceremony begins and Xavier asks Toby who he has chosen to be his guide, Rachel Hernandez. Now all that's left is to sign the Purifier's book in blood. This is a fun cult to be a part of. Eric can't believe Toby actually joined the Foundation, but he still remembers all that Toby said about his wife. Sometime later, Rachel and Toby have a small chat where she does state she did care about his sister. Xavier soon joins the room and dismisses Rachel. He offers his condolences to Toby and understands Joy had a troubled life. Toby wants to know what happened to his sister, but Xavier dodges the question. Typical. Toby's frustrated by this, and Xavier understands his desire for revenge, but knows this isn't what he needs. Toby's reputation is well known throughout Hope's Junction, and Xavier offers to help with repairing it. If Toby goes back to the steel mill, you know, the place where the incident happened that led to his tarnished reputation, Xavier believes Toby has to revisit his path for the Purifier to clear the way for his future and to bring back something. What it is, the Purifier will reveal all. Toby does as Xavier asks, but not without the assistance of some liquid courage. Searching the abandoned steel mill, Toby hears Joy's voice before the iconic siren blares to transition us to the other world. A flashback of a fire and people running play out with a horrifying monster coming out of the flames. It entangles Toby in its vines as the ghost of his sister looks down on him, ignoring his pleas. Toby cries out it was his fault and apologizes, but no one seems to hear. The scene then plays back to seemingly the real world where Toby's curled up in a ball, sobbing, holding some sort of socket wrench, I think. Returning to Norway, Astrid is walking the farm at night and seems to be taken to the other world there, filtered with red and littered with pitchforks to symbolize a mob after the Johansons, methinks, I don't know. A monster flies down, but soon disappears when a motherly voice calls to Astrid. It's Aurora, the CPS servant. Astrid's surprised that she's already here, as she wasn't expecting her for some time, but Aurora confirms this was the time they agreed upon. Orson comes up and has his hunter doll shoot Aurora dead. The social servant sends Orson to play to speak with his mother privately. Astrid's worried she's going to be written up, but Aurora sees how stressed she is and decides to give her some homeopathic medicine. Wait, to help calm her nerves. Astrid doesn't like taking medicine she's not prescribed, but takes the pill just in case. Back at the Foundation, Toby brings the wrench from the steel mill to Xavier's desk, stating he did what was asked and wants Xavier to hold up his end of the bargain. Xavier refers to the wrench as a blight fetish. He promises Toby that Rachel will be dealt with, but Toby is tired of words and wants action. Xavier goes over how terrible Toby's life has been, but not just his life, the life of everyone else around him. His sister and the people whose deaths he is responsible for at the steel mill, that place. All of those awful things to everyone around him was all Toby's fault, as he is the source of the withering that is destroying the town. Toby doesn't believe him, but Xavier lets him know that once the rot has consumed Hope's Junction, it will spread around the world. Little does Xavier know that it already has. Astrid is working away at the lab when she has a vision composing of a few monsters. She reaches for the medicine Aurora gave her, but decides against it and tosses the pill. Astrid is speaking on the phone with a funeral planner to select flowers for her mother, but the visions are too distracting, so she ends the call. She approaches a cadaver with a scalpel, but it soon turns into her abusive mother. It's drama. While all that's exciting, we need to get back to Toby buying more booze. Joy's ghost won't leave him alone no matter how much he apologizes or obeys her. He even offers to kill Rachel if it will get her off his back. A couple of guys are crying for help nearby, stating they've been attacked by a monster and one of them is hurt. Toby swaggers over to the gentleman, but they seem horrified as he approaches. Not for their help being Toby fuck-up Sorelli, but they don't even seem to recognize him as a human. They attack Toby, striking him a couple of times before running off. Toby manages to rise, and when he sees his reflection in the store window, a monster in a hazmat suit is there instead. Seems like we're leaning into Vincent's little comment from Silent Hill 3 now. We'll see if that builds into anything over the rest of the season. At the Foundation headquarters, they discuss Toby bringing in a blight fetish from the steel mill, supposedly confirming that he is the source of the withering. Xavier comforts Rachel that she is not the source of all of this, but Toby. Krista is keeping an eye on him, while Xavier wants Toby to participate in another ritual called the Severing. Oh, that's why this chapter is called Severance. The catch is that it requires a willing heart, and Toby cannot be forced into performing the rite. And Xavier has another request for Rachel. It seems like Toby's friendship with Eric might get in the way of Toby volunteering to be severed. The Foundation needs her to have Eric no longer associate with Toby. By any means necessary. Capiche? It's all to stop the withering and for the greater good, you see? Okay, back to Astrid. Ingrid's tormenting her until Astrid finally states how her mother ruined everyone's life, but this doesn't stop Ingrid at all. She knows she's ruined everyone's life, so she just hurls more insults at her daughter. Eventually, Ingrid's ghost disappears and Astrid has a cry. She later meets up with Aurora at the ice bar, discussing what kind of flowers to arrange for her mother's funeral. The way she runs through the options sounds like she wants the audience to decide, but this wasn't in any of the polls they ran. Aurora asks if she took the pill. Astrid says she didn't think it was necessary, and since she works in pharmaceuticals, there's no way she's going to take a pill composed of who knows what. Wait. Knowing how these choice-based outcome games work, I doubt anything would have played out differently if she had taken it. Aurora reveals that she's learned a bit about the Johansson's reputation in Stilldalen. Great. And wonders if it's just mourning the loss of her mother that is Astrid's problem. Astrid isn't sure how she's going to talk about her mother at the funeral, but it all seems to be a no-win speech she'll have to give. At the farm, Carl's gazing at Ingrid's ring when Mette joins him. He's just spoken with Detective Haugen, and they're releasing Ingrid's body. Carl has decided to give the ring to Mette, and he regretted not giving her one long ago. Mette also continues to think about him and what could have been. And so did Ingrid, but perhaps with her death, these two can finally be together. Returning to Hope's Junction, Rachel tells Eric that he shouldn't be seeing Toby anymore. Eric's shocked because Toby was just inducted into the Foundation. Rachel insists Eric to trust her, which he does, but doesn't understand why she's asking this of him. Of course, Rachel can't tell him because the Foundation demands it. Eric reluctantly agrees, but Rachel wants him to swear to her he won't be in touch with Toby any longer. And what she wants him to swear it on is his daughter's life. All right, so let's check in on Toby and see how he's doing. Well, he is at the bar, trying to get another drink, but the bartender won't until Toby's paid his tab. Despite swearing on his daughter's life just now, Eric also walks into the bar. I mean, to his credit, he does try to avoid Toby. I mean, he's spotted by his friend, but, well, I guess we shouldn't give him too much credit because he damn well knew Toby was going to be at this bar. Toby confronts Eric, wondering where he has been. Eric tries to get Toby to leave him alone and that he can't help him with whatever trouble he's in. Instinctively, and correctly, Toby knows Rachel's the reason behind why Eric won't help him. Toby says more unkind, but true things about Eric being whipped by his wife. So Eric leaves Toby drunk on the restroom floor. Getting himself up, a call comes through Toby's phone with another Silent Hill track ringtone. Moshi moshi, trauma des. Toby apologizes once more to his sister, but Joy just has more accusations to throw at her brother. That his alcoholism is the reason why she was addicted to drugs, killing everyone at Steel Mill, yada yada. Okay, Toby has problems and has hurt others, but Joy, you're the one that stuck the needle in yourself. You know, maybe take some accountability for your addiction issues. Anyways, that wraps up this chapter. Chapter 5, Vanished. This week opens up to an unfamiliar man arranging things on his desk. While overall not interesting, it turns out to be the layout of the desk that's in the arcane library where all the minigames can be found. At the steel mill, Barbara, Xavier, Krista, Rachel, and Toby begin the severing. Xavier keeps his promise to Toby by speaking to Rachel that when one Foundation member causes another harm, even at the service of the Purifier, it breeds blight. And so Xavier slices Rachel with the ceremonial blade before moving on to Toby. Xavier then hands the knife to Rachel to use on Toby for the severing. Rachel slices one wrist, the other's chant. She slices another, but something feels wrong when it's done. A shift in reality begins. Skipping over to Norway, Carl and Mette are about to kiss when Astrid walks in. She's disgusted, absolutely disgusted. Her father couldn't wait for Ingrid to be buried before moving on to his sister-in-law and knows he gave Mette the ring. Orson's also been throwing a fit, so Astrid left him outside, where all the wolves and monsters are, not sure what to do with him at the service. Carl offers to look after him, but she doesn't want Orson to go up to her mother's casket. Carl thinks he has a right to say goodbye, because he does, but Astrid thinks Orson is too young and asks him to be firm with him if he asks about Grandma. The funeral director calls, but who knows what flowers were arranged. We gotta get back to Hope's Junction. Toby wanders the other world and finds the ceremonial knife. He actually manages to kill a monster with it. Good job, Toby. Rachel catches up to him, but Toby insists they need to finish the ritual and end the withering. In an out-of-character and definitely is an unearned moment in the story, Toby places the knife in Rachel's hand and forces her to stab him. The ghost of Joy walks behind Rachel as Toby bleeds out on the ground, believing that now he has made everything right. As the screen fades to black, we soon see a completely new monster that resembles a priest looming over Toby's body. Is it the Purifier? Probably. Alright, so this is the first major consequence of the community poll to play out in the story, and I want to mention something. Okay, so there's been a lot of complaints about Silent Hill Ascension being pay to win. So I actually took a look at the poll the day before it aired, and it turns out at that time, the decision that was in the lead was Toby turning the knife on Rachel. There was even a guy who contributed 300,000 points to that decision, and it was exactly that amount it was leading by. So the reason to contribute the most amount of points to a poll is that you earn something called the golden moment. It's exclusive to whoever contributes the most IP to the winning choice. They get like an exclusive scene that plays out compared to everyone else. This person purchased at least 300,000 points to contribute to a decision that they winded up losing by 100,000. I don't know if someone else bought 400,000 points, or it could have been a concerted effort by a handful of people, or just using the rally function, which multiplies how many points are donated to a poll within a certain time frame. If anyone is saying that this is a pay-to-win game, just know someone purchased at least 300,000 points and lost. It is now time to pay our respects to Ingrid Johansson with her most ardent supporter in her death, her beloved daughter, Astrid, telling everyone what a monster bitch she was. Also, over all that drama about flowers, all they have is a single rose at the funeral? Wow, how much did that set you back? And the only funeral guests are Ava, who probably was kicked out by her mom again, Mette, Carl, Orson, and Leo, the ice bartender. Orson whines he wants to see his grandmother, and Astrid's like, "Oh, you told me that you would take care of him, Papa." Then, in a weird out-of-character moment, Carl is pretty harsh on the kid. This is that decision in these sorts of games that winds up playing out much harsher than you expected it to when you selected it. I don't think anyone thought Carl was going to be so cold towards Orson. I think we all thought he would be firm but gentle, not being like, "Oh, stop your whining, you little brat. Grow into your accent already." The fog eventually grows thicker, and the funeral director asks Astrid if they can move everyone inside now. Astrid just needs to get Orson, but when she turns around to find him, he's not there. Oh no, Orson's gone! Not again! At the Foundation, post-severing, the core Foundation group, as well as Faith in the corner reading a book, are talking about Toby's sacrifice and if it was enough to stop the withering. It's kind of funny how Eric isn't ranked high enough in the Foundation to participate in these meetings, but Faith is more than welcome to read a book in the corner. Well, considering the first season is supposed to last 8 months and we're on week 5, I don't think the withering is over, and neither does Rachel, as she believes that it's still approaching. Barbara wants to consult Radcliffe's text first, though. Xavier is certain Rachel's suspicions are correct, as he still believes she has a special connection to the Purifier. For now, though, everyone is best to leave and get some rest. Rachel and Xavier stay behind for a moment. He wonders if she's doing okay after Toby's death, considering they knew each other, and he was close friends with her husband. Xavier tries to comfort her that this may be a trial from the Purifier to make her stronger. For now, she should take Faith home and rest. Rachel calls for her daughter, but she doesn't answer. It turns out she's no longer in the room. Rachel searches all over the building and tries to call Eric, but is unable to reach him. We return to Norway to see a search party for Orson is underway. Carl and Astrid split up to look for him. As soon as Astrid is alone, Ingrid's ghost comes out to taunt her daughter more and, let her know that she heard everything she said about her at the funeral. Uh-oh. But she doesn't hold that against Orson, and offers to help Astrid look for him. Not before she calls her daughter what Google Translate says is the equivalent of pussy, though. Anyways, enough hunting for Orson. Let's get back to Hope's Junction and check up on what Eric has been doing since he's been left out on all the fun. Working at the laundromat, he gets the feeling that something is there, but can't quite shake it off. Doesn't matter, because a phone call comes in and it's from Toby, but that can't be, because he's dead. Well, turns out Toby is asking for another favor, despite knowing Eric isn't supposed to be talking to him. Toby left a little something behind the washing machine that is always broke. Wonder if that's the reason why it's always broke. It's some money to buy everyone around at the Silver Pines, the bar Toby's always drunk as a skunk at. He also wants Eric to tell everyone to go fuck themselves. I mean, sure, but why can't you do it yourself, Toby? Well, turns out this was a pre-recorded message to reach Eric upon Toby's death. How Toby got this set up is a mystery, or it's his ghost calling. I mean, that's been established. Anyway, Eric doesn't believe his friend is dead and tries to call him, but to no avail, as shown by him suddenly dropping his phone and leaving the laundromat. Why did you drop your phone, Eric? This is kind of like the bad ending in Resident Evil 7 where Ethan throws the phone out of the helicopter over a fucking video. Like, you can just delete the video. Returning to Stilldalen, Ingrid leads Astrid deeper into the woods, having her believe she's taking him to Orson. At some point, Ingrid disappears and Astrid realizes she's been holding something like a fleshy stick, an arm, I don't know. It's so poorly lit, I can't tell what it is. Sobs echo throughout the woods. But enough of that. Let's go to the other mother searching for their child. Rachel thinks she hears Faith, but runs into another cameo contest winner trapped in the fog looking for their doggie. They go looking for their missing ones together, talking for a bit about how cults are bad and feeding Rachel's doubts. Shortly, a dog starts whimpering and barking, but something doesn't seem right to Rachel. Turns out the dog was actually a snarler, and it attacks the stranger, in which our heroine leaves the man to die. Good job, girl. The search for Orson continues with Carl and Ava. Ava says it seems like Astrid wasn't quite right in the head and that she doesn't think the others are truly there to help them. Astrid reunites with them and shows the two of them that she found footprints that appear to be Orson's size. Carl tries to calm Astrid down, seeing she's working herself in a frenzy. Soon, the woods become too quiet as they can no longer hear the rest of the search party. Eventually, they reach a point where the trees have been recently burned. Carl's puzzled as a fire of this size would have been noticed from afar. He tells Astrid they should turn in, but she insists that she can keep going without him if need be. Returning to Hope's Junction, Eric arrives at Toby's favorite bar and buys everyone a round of drinks. And just like Toby requested, Eric delivers his late friend's message to everyone in the bar. As he heads out, Krista gives her thanks to Eric. Apparently she's drinking despite the Foundation looking down on it. Rachel turns to the Foundation and tells Xavier that Faith has gone missing, believing it to be punishment for her doubts. Xavier asks where Eric is, but she has been unable to get a hold of him. Although, going back and looking at everything, realizing that Eric dropped his phone at the laundromat is sort of brilliant in how stupid it is, because it actually is a legit reason why she's been unable to get a hold of him, but it's still stupid on his part. This game is dumb. I love it. While Rachel does want him to help her, she's also scared that Eric will blame her for losing Faith. Xavier tells her it's important that he knows his daughter needs help, and the details of how she went missing can wait. Seems like Rachel doesn't just lack faith in the Foundation, but also in her marriage. Eric's back at the laundromat when the lights suddenly explode. Krista followed him from the bar and is about to tell him on what happened to Toby. Before she can, they're both transitioned into the other world. A monster that resembles a conjoined twin grabs Eric, but we can't see how this plays out just yet. We need to get back to the search for Orson. Carl's too tired and can't keep up with his daughter. He convinces her to go back to their house, Orson possibly waiting there for them. As they walk back to the farm, Astrid sees a figure in the woods. Her desperation sees it as Orson, but Carl holds her back, knowing that it's another monster. When its wings flare out, the two run as fast as their legs can carry. Once they're at a safe distance, Astrid wonders what they just saw. Carl gets in a quick dig that thing is what he's been seeing since Ingrid passed away. Before he can say much more, something else approaches them. It's Britt, Astrid's sister and Carl's second daughter. That ends Chapter 5. Will they find Orson and Faith? Will Eric make it out of the laundromat okay? Let's find out in Chapter 6, Fractured. At the farm, Britt tells her that Mette called her because everyone has been searching for them for the past 3 days. Astrid can't believe it as they were only away for a few hours. Carl was about to tell Britt of the monster they saw in the forest, but decided against it. A small spat happens between the two sisters, with Britt being particularly nasty, but a knock on the door puts their fight to an end. It's none other than Detective Haugen and the boys. She has questions for Carl and Astrid, wondering where they've been for these past 3 days. Astrid can't explain that as it was only a few hours for her, and, well, she just makes excuses that they lost track of time. The detective shows that while looking for the missing father and daughter, she found Orson's hunter doll. It was near where Britt found Astrid and Carl. Unfortunately for Astrid, she can't have the doll as it needs to be held for evidence. Everything that has happened has been a lot for Astrid, and so she excuses herself. Privately with Carl, Detective Haugen lets him know that the parameters of the search has changed from rescue to recovery. Back at the laundromat in Hope's Junction, Eric is being strangled by the strange monster. Krista grabs the broom, striking the creature to let Eric go. Soon everything returns to normal, as though it was nothing more than a dream. She lets him know that he can thank Toby and that Xavier told her not to let anything happen to Eric. But what just happened here doesn't make sense, as Toby sacrificed himself to stop the withering. Guess it didn't work. Oops. Eric asks her what the monster was and where it came from, but she just coldly tells him, ask your wife. At the farm, Astrid had to walk around a bit outside. When her father approaches her, she asks if Haugen will bring reinforcements to help find Orson. Carl dejectedly tells her that the police won't, as time is not on their side to find the boy, and that now they need to prepare themselves for the worst. Astrid refuses to hear it and will continue the search first thing in the morning. Carl knows she's dealing with so much internally and that she needs to speak with a professional clinician or her sister, but she refuses, as finding her son is what is most important. Eric's at home when Rachel arrives. She begins immediately yelling at her husband that she's been unable to get a hold of him. Stunned by her sudden aggression, he tells her that he was at work and taking care of a favor from Toby. Rachel, blinded in her rage, tells him that Toby's gone and that his family needs him. Before he can tell Rachel about being attacked by the monster in the laundromat, she reveals that Faith is missing. She's been out searching all over town for their daughter and that the Foundation has failed them despite all the Hernandezes have given them. Eric, a good father, agrees to search for his daughter with Rachel. During their search, Rachel catches a glimpse of a large monster that I believe is referred to as the Bruiser. Eric tries to call the police, but no one is answering. He suggests searching the playground, but Rachel has exhausted that location among many others. She wants to speak with Xavier, but Eric's hesitant because the Foundation will always pull rank on him and leave him out of the conversation. He's reasonably nervous they'll do the same, even when it comes to matters regarding his own daughter's safety. Eric wants Rachel to promise him she won't allow them to exclude him. Meanwhile, Astrid continues the search alone for Orson when a call from Britt comes through. She accuses Astrid of harming her son. Confused, Astrid threatens to hang up, but then Orson's voice comes through the phone. They're both at the Ice Hotel. Shortly afterward, Astrid ends the call and heads towards the hotel. Rachel and Eric are at the Foundation to speak with Xavier, but only Barbara and Krista approach them. Barbara tells Rachel something has come up and that it may be best to talk privately. No, Eric's... Eric pleads for his wife to allow them to have him present, and Rachel happily does so, as Faith is his daughter too. Barbara doesn't like talking about the withering with initiates, but Krista lets it slip that Eric has experienced it. So, rules be damned. Barbara does allow Eric to stay, just as long as he doesn't say anything. And, well, he takes it. Xavier's gone missing. The only thing they knew is that he said something about protecting the innocents. Rachel wonders if that means Faith is with him. Barbara tries to assure her that everything will work out as the purifier intends. When the couple is alone, Eric thanks Rachel for standing up for him. Rachel thinks Xavier has taken Faith to protect her from the withering, but Eric isn't so sure about that. She now feels comfortable staying at the Foundation and waiting for Xavier to return with their daughter. Eric, however, does not want to sit around and wait. He doesn't understand how his wife could one moment earlier exclaim the Foundation failed them, and then the next is placing all her trust in them. This tips Eric over the edge, frustrated with Rachel pushing him around and making him cut off his only friend, who is now dead in part because of her. She insists she only wants to keep Eric safe, but he believes she just wants to be in control. Eric heads back into town alone to continue the search for his daughter. Down on the farm, Carl has had a little bit too much to drink. We hear a woman beckoning Carl to bed. It sounds a bit like Ingrid. He hobbles up to his bedroom to find Mette inside. She sees he's a bit distraught and confused to see her there, so she comforts him a little. Carl tells her that if Astrid were to see them, she'd be upset. Oh, but Mette reminds him that she's outside searching for Orson still, baby. Carl's about to join his daughter, but Mette stops him from going as he's in no condition to search the cold, dark woods. While the two talk, there's a brief glimpse of Ingrid, which causes Carl to step back. Mette is concerned, but he simply states he's still hungover and only needs some water. In Hope's Junction, Eric's going all over town, leaving missing posters of Faith at local stores. Krista approaches him, throwing in a snippy remark of Rachel leaving him to search alone. Eric stands up for his wife a bit, telling Krista he thinks Rachel is doing what she thinks is the best course of action right now. But Krista doesn't buy it, and asks if Eric would prefer to have Rachel joining him in the search. Astrid arrives at the Ice Hotel where Britt is staying. She talks about the phone call she just had with Britt, but her sister has no knowledge of what she's talking about. Astrid asks where Orson is, but Britt tells her she doesn't have him, and now she's starting to worry that perhaps Astrid did do something to her nephew. Other guests of the hotel pretend to not be listening in, but the social pressure gets to Astrid and she leaves. At the Foundation, they found Xavier. Oh, but he's catatonic. And Faith is still missing. Rachel's upset as Barbara told her Faith was with him, except that's not at all what she said. Barbara does apologize, though, and reveals she has to leave town to find answers to stop the withering. Sorry, Faith is just not as important as that. Since Xavier's no longer fit to lead the Hope's Junction chapter, there will be new leadership taking place. Barbara leaves Rachel with a note that was on Xavier's person when they found him. Reading the note, she is shocked to find that Xavier left Krista to take his place if anything were to befall him. And if that weren't all, there's a warning that states to not trust Rachel as her lust for power blinds her. It's rather odd considering Xavier kept telling her how he believed she was the Purifier's chosen. But let's very briefly go to Stilldalen, where Carl's washing up when he hears what is best described as a siren song throughout the house. It seems to be coming from Mette, and Carl walks up to her and pulls her in for a romantic kiss. Ooh la la. Krista and Eric are searching for Faith in the foggy streets when a winged monster attacks them. Once the monster is frightened off, Eric says aloud to himself what that was. Krista reveals that that is the Withering, and it's all thanks to Rachel. Eric doesn't believe her, but Krista stops him from leaving by mentioning how Rachel treats him. Yeah, Rachel doesn't treat him well, but if it isn't Toby, it's Krista that has to talk smack about her. Although with Toby, he was looking out for Eric, but with Krista, she's wanting to hurt Rachel. And we can probably add homewrecker to Krista's bio as she gets close, asking Eric what he wants. The chapter ends before he can answer. I know affairs can be exciting in terms of the drama they bring to a story, but Eric's the only likable character in the entire cast, and I don't want to see the possibility of a dalliance between him and anyone else, especially Krista. There is some weird Krista stans for some reason. I mean, I'm not surprised by the dislike of Rachel. I'm not pro-Rachel either. I hope I made that clear here. But I'm hoping many of them don't try to get Eric to have an affair with Krista. Dear God, you're just sending him from one bitch to another. Anyways, Chapter 7, Qualms. Carl is on the phone, pacing the living room, worried about Astrid, who hasn't come home. Based off the community vote, it's likely Aurora from the Barn of Arnett. When he gets a moment, he sits down to watch the latest episode of Candle Cove. Astrid comes in, asking if her father's okay, but he doesn't respond to her, just continues to look at the TV. She asks if that is all he's been doing, and it seems to snap him out of it. He tells his daughter he did call for help, just as there is a knock on the door. He answers it and lets the arrivals inside. It seems Carl has placed Astrid on a psychiatric hold. Also, loving how silly these cameo contest winners are, dressing their avatars up. Always a good thing for designers to allow people's avatars to show up as NPCs in your very serious horror game. Astrid surrenders herself to the orderlies, but not without letting her father know she'll never forgive him. Once the hospital determines Astrid to be of sound mind, she's then interrogated by Detective Haugen, because that's what's always best for a distraught mother whose child is missing, and her family was so concerned they had to have her be taken into the hospital for psychiatric help. Haugen asks Astrid if anyone else has access to her car, which she confirms no one does. Before Astrid can know why she's asking this, Haugen asks her to repeat where she was when Orson went missing. Astrid realizes that the police are starting to suspect her being involved in her child's disappearance. Gee, Astrid, where on earth did they get the idea that Carl possibly murdered your mother? It couldn't have been when you handed over the syringe of morphine to the police, could it? Whatever Haugen has against the Johanssons, it has gone too far this time. The detective doesn't flinch and reveals that there was a child's glove found attached to a tire on Astrid's vehicle and wonders if it looks familiar to her. Astrid reveals that it is Orson's glove. Whatever beef exists between the two, there is a lot of reasonable suspicion with Astrid right now. She's been missing for 3 days, her behavior as of late has been erratic, understandably so, and now Orson's glove being found near her car. However, the police doesn't have any hard evidence to arrest Astrid, that is, unless the lab results incriminate Astrid. We return to Hope's Junction, where Rachel shouts at a catatonic Xavier that he's left Krista in charge, despite believing Rachel's blessed. Soon she seems to hear Faith cry out for her on the other side of the door, but something isn't right. This also seems to draw a slight reaction from Xavier, but all he does is look over in Rachel's direction with the same blank stare. Faith's distorted voice cries out for her mother before the door opens, with giant bugs wandering in. I believe they're called crawlers, as they crawl onto Xavier until Rachel scares them off. Returning to the search for Faith, Krista is intimately holding onto Eric, waiting for his response to last week's cliffhanger. It's been so long since anyone has asked him how he's doing that he doesn't know how to answer. But Krista cares. She cares so much and is here for him. Before this can go any further, a monster interrupts them, thank the purifier. They both try to hide in safety, but Krista's dragged away by the monster that killed Joy. Oh well, bye-bye, homewrecker. At the Ice Hotel, Astrid has a drink alongside recovering alcoholic Britt. Not sure you should be here, girlie. Astrid confides in her sister what it was like to have her father commit her to the hospital. Britt tries to lighten the mood by relating their experiences with orderlies. Astrid reveals to her sister that Haugen found a glove in her car covered in blood, and she has no idea how it got there. To make matters worse, Britt reveals that Nils is back in town. He is a true crime podcaster now, oh boy, and is talking about Orson's disappearance. Britt puts on his most recent episode for Astrid, where he puts her on blast for the possible murder of her son. Typical true crime podcasters, making everything worse for those directly impacted by the crime. At this point, we don't know the nature of the relationship between Nils and Astrid. At first, I thought maybe he was Orson's father, but I can't see anyone doing a true crime podcast around their son's disappearance while there's an active search going on. So maybe he's an ex or something else entirely. We'll find out, I'm sure. Astrid wonders how Britt knew Nils was in town and if they've been keeping in touch, especially as he has information on Orson's case. Britt tells her sister to stop and to not let her paranoia get to her, so Astrid instead lets it get to her by asking if Britt turned in the glove to Haugen. Tired of her sister's accusations, Britt leaves. Sometime later, Astrid is at work. When she gets to a sample that expired before reaching maturity, she can't help but think of her own son. Meta soon comes in to check up on Astrid. Remember, Meta is a nurse and is looking to pick up some work at the same hospital Astrid works at. She knows her niece isn't doing well, but Astrid doesn't want to deal with her aunt right now. Although Meta lets it nearly slip that she and Carl might suspect Astrid over Orson's disappearance, so that's great. Before this conversation can go any further, a code blue is announced over the intercom. A code blue is any patient with an unexpected cardiac or respiratory arrest requiring resuscitation and activation of a hospital-wide alert. Apparently, this makes the 3rd code blue this week, and there's been such an unusual high number of them. The patients seem to be recovering, but then suddenly die under mysterious circumstances. Could it be that the withering is behind it? Yes. We return to Hope's Junction to see Krista survived the monster attack. Darn it! As she walks back to the Foundation. Rachel asks where she's been, and Krista reveals she was searching for Faith with Eric, but they were separated, and she doesn't know where he is now. Rachel wants to go to him, but Krista tells her it isn't safe. It seems almost becoming Monster Chow has done a number on her as Krista talks about the withering in more detail, and her voice is depleted of its usual vitriol towards Rachel. Astrid is at the docks with Orson's glove before Britt joins her. They go back and forth with barbs at each other, but the air around them does cool shortly. Astrid mentions she feels like she can't trust herself anymore, and perhaps she may bear some responsibility for what has happened to Orson. Britt has complete faith in her sister that Astrid didn't kill her son. They discuss a bit about what Britt has been through since she came home, and if she's spoken to her father about what happened. Britt decides to take Carl to one of her support groups to help him understand what she's going through. At the meeting, Carl joins his daughter, who asked him to come, as there are some difficult things she wants to tell him. He isn't thrilled about being here, but, well, he came. That's what matters. Unfortunately, reality shifts for Carl, where he can't focus on what his daughter is trying to tell him. A monster also joins the meeting for a minute before walking out of the room. While he can't focus on the conversation, we can hear from Britt that he often speaks of hearing monsters in the woods, and that these episodes have been happening to him for some time. We return to the Foundation, where Rachel and Krista reveal to other members that Xavier is catatonic, and that he had a note that he named Krista the new leader in his place. With Krista now the new acting head, she tells everyone that they cannot leave the Foundation until it's safe. Out in the other world, we return to Eric, who comes across Toby's corpse. Oh, God. Okay, so they just left him out here. The Foundation does a really wonderful job of taking care of their dead members. Oh, and the index finger on his left hand is gone? I don't recall if this was removed in the severing. Maybe it was. They tend to obscure details that you frequently miss out on these sorts of things. Funny, though, as Toby joked about sacrificing a finger when he joined the Foundation. Xavier soon approaches, talking, but only the words of Radcliffe. Eric runs towards him, but Xavier doesn't seem to acknowledge him. Eric tries to get some sense into Xavier, but it's clear he isn't all there. Better make a decision soon, Eric. A monster approaches. At the support group, Carl tells everyone one of the monsters is now rampant in the hospital and warns them to hide. Everyone looks at him like he's crazy, and Britt is disappointed in her father for still being unwilling to listen to her. She runs out, realizing her father won't be able to understand her. Astrid's speaking with another employee about how they keep losing so many patients. Hopefully her labs will reveal the reason why they keep dying. Before she can get back to work, the cadaver on the gurney turns into her mother, who once again has so many kind words to share with her daughter. Ingrid accuses Astrid of killing Orson, fueling her despair and self-doubt. As Astrid screams at her mother that she didn't hurt her son, the co-worker she was just speaking with comes back into the room. Great. That's just what she needs. Everyone at work to be convinced that she's gone mad and killed her son. Returning to the Withering in Hope's Junction, Eric continues trying to return Xavier to his senses. He confides in the loss of his mother to Xavier, hoping it'll reach the elderly man. Unfortunately, the monster interrupts them, but it seems that the other world Eric was experiencing alongside Xavier was a dream world. He awakens at the Foundation, and Xavier is there, back to his usual self, thanking Eric. Xavier meets with the other members and tells everyone Eric saved him. He also thanks Krista for taking care of the Foundation and for Rachel supporting her. I do want to let y'all know there was a bit of a voting battle between whether Rachel would be honest about Xavier's note, and it actually delayed the live stream for like maybe 5 minutes. While Krista may have some stands, it seems the decision that won out might have worked more in Rachel's favor. Xavier excuses everyone to speak privately with Eric so he can properly give him his full appreciation. He refers to Eric as a healer, and that he now believes Eric will play a significant role in the Foundation and is crucial to stop the Withering. All that's left now is to see if Eric is truly devoted to the Foundation and whose side he's on. Barbara's come back with a book that reveals how they can find Rachel's daughter. She tells Rachel that someone closely related to Faith needs to sacrifice their eye. So, who's it gonna be, Eric or Rachel? To make matters better, Barbara tells Rachel to keep this between the two of them. And the cameo contest winners in the room. Let's not forget them too, Babs. At the hospital in Still Done, Astra called over Detective Haugen and tells her that she found Orson's glove. Now, I had to double check this. This is the exact same glove that Haugen presented in the interrogation room. If by finding the glove, you meant you swiped it off the table after Haugen left key evidence in the room with the prime suspect unmonitored, I mean, yeah, I guess you found it. And unfortunately, the audience chose for Astrid to turn it over rather than the smart decision of destroying it. She tells the officer she thinks that Orson is dead and that she killed him. Detective Haugen reasonably interprets this as a murder confession and places Astrid under arrest. The distraught mother resists the officer, but soon slips into the other world. Rachel paces back and forth in the ceremony room at the Foundation when she is also taken to the other world. She hears Faith at first, but soon notices another woman not too far from her. Rachel calls out, but the other woman doesn't seem to notice her. This new woman turns out to be Astrid calling out for her son. Rachel wants to help the woman who's in the same shoes as she is, but a monster is approaching Astrid. Rachel tries to tell the woman to come with her, as she doesn't want to abandon her like that one NPC with the missing dog, but she will if need be. We hear Orson cry for his mother in the distance as more monsters approach Astrid. And that is where our story left off for the holiday hiatus. While there are still several more weeks for the season to play out, the two stories of Hope's Junction in Stilldalen are finally coming together. What exactly is the nature of the Withering? How does it connect these two cities an ocean away? Why does the town of Stilldalen despise the Johanssons so? What happened at the steel mill that Toby was the scapegoat when Rachel was just as responsible as him? Who is Zane, the man in the fog? And what does any of this have to do with Silent Hill? In due time, dolls. In due time.